Very, very possible. This was the plan all along. And that's the part that I can't really put too much thought into because I don't think it's actually the part that matters the most. The part that matters the most is how people are reacting to it. And when we see the amount of people who are so aggressive about saying, how dare you think that free speech should be free? That is a stunning, stunning bit of information. It's incredible to see people go down this road. So I'm more than happy for America to see the level of reaction to the idea that people should be allowed to, like, for example, the New York Post, when they have a clear, honest story about Hunter Biden and a laptop and emails, they should be allowed to share that.
Yeah, well, and I found it interesting. I don't troll Elon Musk's Twitter all that often.
Mine you do.
But yours, I'm on daily. I'm checking in on what you're talking about.
It's where all the cool kids are.
But I was looking on just kind of oddly, at some of his tweets. I mean, one, he put out a poll today asking people, do you think that I should basically buy Twitter? Yes or no? And there's 24 hours for people to vote. I think 1.6 million people have voted. Other tweets was just, I love you. Or one was, oh, hi, LOL. That's just a tweet. So could somebody like Elon Musk give a shot in the arm to Twitter that it needs, make it more interesting, make it more relevant? They were net loss in 2021. Can he get them back in the green and make them relevant?
I think we're having two different conversations. If the idea is that they were net loss in terms of income, in terms of value, that's about how Twitter becomes monetizable and toto. It's a far different play than, let's say, a Facebook play and how much easier it is for Facebook to engage that monetization. If we're having a conversation about can he make it more relevant, I would argue that Twitter is relevant. I think some people, since Elon Musk has made this decision, this announcement, have said, well, Twitter doesn't really move things the way...
Twitter is not real life, as we all like to say.
Well,
neither is
and I
Instagram,
agree with
for that matter.
It's not real life, but it still does have plenty of influence. And so the idea of allowing more people to engage that influence or have the opportunity for influence is extremely important. And as he started with some of the original conversations, isn't that where we want to be? In his letter to the board, this is how you create a democracy. You have to allow this kind of free speech. This is the town square. Why aren't we allowing this interchange of thoughts and conversations?
Well, and one point he makes is some of the people who have the most followers on Twitter aren't actually tweeting. I think he pointed out Justin Bieber has posted one tweet in an entire year.
But his sweater for the Toronto Maple Leafs is the fastest selling thing in the NHL.
He doesn't have to tweet often.
That's basically it. Leave your monkeys in Germany, right? And then everything else is fine.
Okay, the cultural references have now gone...
Right over your head.
No, the reason Twitter is relevant is because the ruling class of America and the people who work for the ruling class of America, both in journalism and in politics, they all communicate in the same echo chamber of Twitter. And who controls the town square and the speech there controls what this group of people see and interact about. So it is way more relevant to everybody's life, irrespective of whether you use it or not.
I think the other part that's very interesting, we see this from a lot of cable news. They will take a tweet and decide they can build a whole story on that tweet, and having no bearing on whether or not we all feel that way or think that way. Very rarely does it affect, I'm from Indianapolis. It's good to be in Chicago. And it's not representative of where Indy is. It's not representative of Hoosiers. It's not representative of Tulsa, Oklahoma. It's representative of 9 people somewhere on Madison Avenue or 9 people who are inside the Beltway. It's not representative of real life, but they turn that into a story. And when you don't have enough people being able to push back against that, because those people are prevented from doing so, which is what Twitter has done. I mean, that's not debate. That's reality. It's good to see people fighting back. Will he actually buy it? That I have no idea.
Well, spoken like a prolific tweeter. You couldn't have said it any better.
He could have said it in only 170 characters.
Yeah, right.
Right? Okay, come on.
That was like 30 tweets.
This is a tweet thread. Okay,
it's not 170 characters. We have so much work to do here, guys. This is a telethon. Won't you please give now to Leland and Marnie, would you please?
Thanks, Tony.
Thanks, Tony. All right, as you've heard, some have hailed Musk as a crusader for free speech. Others are saying that he is a billionaire supervillain and that he needs to be stopped. So, is Elon Musk a Dr. Evil, modern-day Albert Einstein, something else? All right, so why does he need to be stopped? How do we stop Elon Musk? Sid Mahassid wrote that article in the UK Independent warning about Musk and joins us now. All right, Professor, what is your concern with somebody who wants to bring free speech to Twitter buying Twitter?
Well, the concern is not bringing free speech to Twitter. Obviously, that's the idea is he a supervillain, as I say, or is he has the potential and the opportunity to become one? So let's do this for a minute. Let's think of James Bond villains. They're conquering the space. They control communication channels. They have control over currencies. They can move the markets really quickly. Does that sound like somebody we might know? SpaceX is, conquering the universe. The other company he has, Starlink, is having about 2,100 satellites up there. Is going to be controlling our internet communications.
You're concerned that by all of a sudden then owning Twitter, he's going to have too much power?
My concern is this article actually that you mentioned was before he was moving for Twitter. My concern is that there is too much power that is being given to one man. As much as I think he should be respected, he's a smart man, he's a good entrepreneur, he has a vision, he works hard, and he deserves the money. It's not about the money. It's about us delegating our entire future to one man, and that's too much responsibility.
Okay, so let me turn it around, just because now we're dealing with the issue right here and now of Twitter, which is, you think about the other billionaires that have sort of bought influence in this same line. Would you have the same concerns of Jeff Bezos, who has bought the Washington Post? He has his Blue Origin. He controls a huge amount of commerce in the United States, around the world, controls the server farms for almost everything that happens on the internet?
Well, obviously, too much control is not good. But again, I want to make sure that I don't sound like I'm about regulation and all that. I think, as opposed to pulling people down, we have to lift others up. Musk, for example, just as an example, he got somewhere around, I believe, $2 billion worth of subsidies when he started Tesla. Another $900 million for SpaceX. Now, how many other entrepreneurs do you think have gotten that kind of support?
There's huge amounts of government subsidies for all sorts of things, and a number of the electric car companies, General Motors and Ford and everybody else, are getting the same electric car subsidies. I'm confused as what the issue is.
It's going to General Motors and others. It's not going to the Elon Musks of the future, who are the entrepreneurial base of what we can build in the future. It's not about the Tesla or the Twitter or the space lane.
I feel like though you're setting. Hold on, but you're setting up a straw man here. Amazon Web Services gets enormous amount of government contracts. They're controlled by Jeff Bezos, who's a billionaire who owns the Washington Post. We're not worried. I'm much more worried about Jeff Bezos becoming a Bond supervillain than Elon Musk. He's shown the willingness, and much more of the willingness to use his power for his own personal political ends. So is Michael Bloomberg. So's Carlos Slim. Why pick on Elon Musk?
Elon Musk has a different perspective of than those guys. Again, too much control by anybody is too much. Elon Musk has, through FCC, has somewhere around permission of about 1,200 satellites over the air.
Okay.
That's tremendous amount of power. Which
anybody else could put up the same thing.
No, he doesn't have the FCC approval to do so.
No, but you can. Okay, I get the point. I'm trying to figure out whether to finding a solution for a problem that doesn't exist or not. Professor, it was good to see you. Thank you. We appreciate you coming on.
Thanks for watching. Click the red subscribe button below so you can get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.